Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Friday night debate. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Tonight is our Friday night debate, and I pass it on to my man, Asoni Sie, to introduce the debate. Mr. Sie.
Mr. Jar, thank you. And again, folks in cyberspace, my name is Anthony Sie, co-hosting on Friday debate today, and it is an interesting debate. And for today's debate, we have a very, very interesting topic for you. Today's topic is who bears the greatest responsibility for inept, shady character individuals, incompetent, and any individual who may be unqualified into our government. It said the president that appoints, or the Senate that confirms. Again, our topic is who bears the greatest responsibility for any inept person who might be in any government. It said the president who appoints, or the Senate that confirms. That is the interesting topic we have for you on today's Friday debate. And to go into the debate, we brought you some interesting panelists. We have with us Mr. Steve Bole. Mr. Steve Bole, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you.
All right. And also joining us on today's debate is Mr. Wilmot Conan. Mr. Conan, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Asani. Happy to be here once again.
All right. So, folks in cyberspace, you have heard from our panelists. We just welcome them. They are not new to you. They're always here to have the conversation that we all care about, and we are happy to have them today. And so, folks, as you have joined us, we will ask you to share the show while we get ready to go into the debate. Mr. Jha.
Well, thank you, Mr. Asoni. We want to say welcome, a warm welcome on this Friday night to our debate night Friday. Mr. Steve Bole and Mr. Wilmot Conan, we want to say welcome. We are expecting Mr. Leo L.N. Johnson, who's also going to be joining us on this special debate. And we want you to join in and let us enjoy and be part of the show. Again, as was announced, the topic, who bears the greatest responsibility in having inept, unqualified, incompetent, and sometimes shady characters in government? We have our constitutions give the president the ability to and the power to appoint, but it should be with the consent of the Senate. It is a constitutional mandate. So the president appoints, the Senate approves. So if we end up with incompetent people in government, bad people, who bears the greatest responsibility? The Senate or the president? We have two guests tonight who have their opinion on that. For Mr. Steve Bole, he thinks the Senate does. And first of all, let's be clear. All our panelists agree that both the Senate and the president share responsibility in having those kind of people in government. But we push them a little bit. And Mr. Steve Bole said the Senate bears the greatest responsibility, while Mr. Wilmot Conan said the president. Now, we're going to go into the debate, and what we're going to do, each of them will have 2 minutes for the opening statement. After that, they are going to rebut one another, engage one another. We, the moderators, will have the opportunity to ask questions. And then we bring you in as viewers to also engage our panelists. So, for each panelist or for each person, anytime you talk is 2 minutes. Anytime you go beyond 2 minutes, we are going to mute your mic or tell you to give the floor to the next. Okay, so after a coin toss, we have Mr. Wilmot Conan who will be going first. So I pass it back to my man, Asoni Sie, who is going to be doing most of the talking tonight. Mr. Sie.
Thank you, Mr. Jha. And so we start with Mr. Conan. Mr. Conan, you are arguing that while it's true the responsibility is shared between the president and the Senate, But you argue also that the president bears the greatest responsibility. Why so?
Well, as the show goes on, we'll go in depth as to why we formed that position. But in introduction, we will simply introduce the concept, a legal concept that is known as respondent superior. It is a doctrine of law that in certain cases make employers responsible or liable for the actions or the conduct of their employees. So it is a legal doctrine, but there is also a political doctrine that goes along with that, which is very simple, that the buck stops with the president. Officials of government, individuals appointed to government are brought into government based on the decision of the executive. It is expected that the executive will go through a vetting process using all of the available data, available information as to competence, as to qualification, as to experience, but most importantly, as to whether this person is best suited to work with the president in achieving the goals and the objectives of the administration. So it is the executive, it is the president that has that hiring decision and that also has that supervisory role once the person is hired. And this is why we maintain that if such an individual was to be found in government, an individual who is an individual who seems not to be fit to do the job, then we think it is the responsibility of the president to take corrective action. While we acknowledge the role of the legislature, but we have to also understand that the legislature has their duty is like a snapshot. They take a snapshot at who this individual is and provide their advice and consent. After that, that individual is no longer under the supervision of the legislature. That individual now comes under the supervision, under the control, under the direction of the president. And he serves at the will and pleasure of the president. So it is the president that has the responsibility to ensure whether whatever that individual does with regard to the assigned task, whether it's consistent, whether it's in line with his pleasure. So we think if such a situation were to occur where someone is grossly incompetent, someone is unable to do their job, then we think that it is the responsibility of the president to take corrective action.
Thank you. All right, we come to you, Steve. Your argument here is that the Senate share the greatest responsibility. Why so?
Good afternoon to you and Mr. Jha and to the Liberian people. I'd like to start off by reminding the Liberian people here that they are the most important people on earth. I also like to point out that Liberian women are the most beautiful women on earth. And I think our panelists on here and you guys also believe that and know that as a fact. Let's get to the issue here about the Senate being the sole responsibility, bearing the sole responsibility of ensuring that the right thing is done. First of all, I'd like to point out that the Senate of Liberia is a unique body that constitutes 30 men and women. And so a balance of equilibrium from all of our 15 counties. You have two representatives from there that serve in the Senate that were voted in by the people as well. You will come to understand that even within a statement that we used earlier for our caption, in the middle of it, we said confirmation. It didn't say appointment. Now, the president can appoint whoever he wishes, at what time, at his will and pleasure, as we will see in Liberia and in other parts of the world. But let's be realistic here. to see that those appointments that the president will make cannot move any further, cannot do anything without the final stamp of the Senate. And that shows you that the senators serve as the goalkeeper, not even the defender, the goalkeeper, the last person you will see before you score a goal in most match. But most importantly, the senators also bear the huge responsibility of ensuring that even when the president vets his candidate that he nominates, they are there to double check, counter check, and they're also there to ensure that whoever the president nominates, whoever they agree. Can you imagine 30 men and women agreeing on one person before they pass as compared to one person? So they bear a greater responsibility in this case at all times of their services to the nation. And so they should not be it should not be a political office in my view. It should also not be somewhere where in the president has an influence, then they will not be able to do their job effectively. That is my view on this topic.
Thank you, Steve Bole there. So, Mr. Kone, you just listened to Steve Bole. Anything that you are like, no?
Oh no, Steve make a lot of important points, which have some validity, and most of them I don't disagree. But I think the point is we are talking about incompetent people in government. So we're talking about incompetent people in government. Who bears the greatest responsibility for incompetent people in government? And the point I have made earlier is that, yes, the Senate does have some responsibility, but let us look at the work of the Senate in context. The Senate work is just a snapshot of that individual at that point in time. We all know how resumes look like when from the applicant. I mean, if you look at an applicant resume, it looks very beautiful. And sometimes we make decisions on that resume. Sometimes we make decisions on what we are hearing as of the current moment. But the question is, if a decision is made to confirm that person, which is a very important decision, that person now assumes the responsibility of that office. And whatever that person does, whatever action of that person, whatever issues of competence and competency of that person, that now becomes the sole purview of the executive. Let us remember here, our system is a system that has co-equal branches of government. So the senators no longer has any authority over an executive appointee who it has confirmed that is now working in the executive. It is the executive that has the responsibility to put all of the mechanisms in place to ensure that individuals perform to the best of their ability. And if they don't, then it is the executive that has to take corrective action. It's just a simple supervisory role. I mean, if you are a manager of a company, the fact that the board confirm individuals for managerial position in that company does not absolve you of the responsibility. Does not absolve you of the responsibility if someone is incompetent or performing, below par in the company.
Thank you, Mr. Kone. Mr. Kone, thank you. Steve, your rebuttal to what Mr. Kone just said.
Well, I want to disagree with Mr. Kone on most of the points he made here in regards to the role of the Senate. I think primarily, if you look at the way our Constitution is structured, the Senate has two major roles, and the two major roles, are not restricted to or are not limited to some extent. The two major roles are legislation and check and balances, and so you can't have it both ways. You can't tell the Liberian people that the senators, the president is responsible to appoint. The president is also responsible to empower. And so the senates are just there to be administrator or just oversee. For me, that's a contradiction in itself. Because let's practically take, for example, these few days, in the case of Zolizo, when he was appointed. Now, the president had to wait for the senators to be able to confirm Zolizo. As of now, as we speak, Zolizo has not been confirmed. as compared to if you go back, you will see also that the lady that was nominated for agriculture, right after that was done, within less than 72 hours, she was confirmed. So that tells you that if the Senate rejects or refuses a candidate or someone that the president did not vet because of maybe some incompetence or some lapse within the system, it is the responsibility of the senators or the Senate to ensure that they pick up on these things. So let's be clear on this, that we cannot say here that the senators are just in managerial position, so they just allow everything to slide. And that is the mentality we have been moving with. That is why the senators have not been in power. That is why the senators have not been doing the work for the past 2 years. That's why we have some people within this government as we speak now that are incompetent, that are inept, and they are preventing the president to some extent from meeting his agenda because they're not doing their jobs and because they don't understand the job. And it all reflects on the president, whether you like it or not. Either the president did not do a good job for selecting good candidates, like he did with the lady from the agriculture ministry a few days, which everyone in Liberia, both the opposition and the ruling party, has been applauding him for that selection, for that nomination, because she represents the Liberian people. She represents what Liberia looks like as compared to other candidates. So how can we say that the Senate is just there as an oversight, or they're just there as watchdogs or watchmen, and they don't have to do anything? That is crippling the Senate, and I think that's injustice.
Thank you, Steve. Again, folks, in cyberspace, this is focused on Liberia, and it's Debate Friday. Our topic for today is who bears the greatest responsibility for any shady character being in our government? Somebody who is not qualified, somebody who is inept. Is it the president who bears the greatest responsibility, or the Senate that confirms? That is our Debate Friday's topic. And at this time, we'll go back to our panelists for questioning. Steve, is there a question that you have for Mr. Kone? Ask Mr. Kone a question.
So my question to Mr. Kone is, especially, I want to restrict my question to this administration, the current administration. What has been the vetting process? What has been the measure put in place to vet people that the president, candidates that the president nominates? One. And my second question to follow up with that is, why is it that it has been showing through the outcome and productivity of this government for the past 2 years that there has been a lot of ineptitude, a lot of incompetence, and a lot of, I would say, unprofessionalism demonstrated from people that the president has nominated over the past time? So does it show that this president is inept? Does it show that he's incompetent? Because his nominees are his direct reflection. Thank you.
Well, first of all, the first question as to what the vetting mechanism is for this administration, that I cannot answer. I'm not in the government. I don't know what protocol that is in place to vet candidates. So I'm not in the current government to know. I want to believe that every government has some sort of guidelines that they use to appoint people in the government. And with regard to your second question, I'm not willing to reach the conclusion that you have reached. I think it's just a matter of opinion, because you've expressed your opinion, so there is no way I can validate that opinion. But back to the original point of debate as to who bears the responsibility for incompetent and inept people in government, my position is that the executive is the one that carry on the continuous supervision of individuals that are appointed in the government. Someone who is deemed competent today through the snapshot of confirmation may be incompetent after confirmation. Who is held responsible for the behavior of that person? You can say because the legislature confirmed that person, so the executive has no responsibility in the matter. Again, in the confirmation process, the legislature is making a snapshot decision as to the competency of that person. So after confirmation, the continuous presence of an individual who failed to perform in the government cannot be attributed to the legislature. That is not to say that the legislature does not have its role to perform due diligence to see who is confirmed and who is not confirmed. They have that role to play. But I think the question is, if it is clear that there is someone that is not performing their duty, there is someone that is not up to their task, who bears the responsibility for the continuous presence of that individual in the government? That cannot be the legislature. I mean, the legislature can only act on information that is available to it at the time of confirmation. And you cannot say that because someone appears competent at confirmation and that person failed to perform after confirmation, so that we should hold the legislature responsible for that, because the legislature does not supervise that person. Under the doctrine of separation of powers, the legislature does not have administrative control over individuals that are in the executive.
Thank you, Mr. Kune. Your question for Steve.
The question I have for Steve is that if you say that the legislature should be held responsible for incompetence, people that may be deemed incompetent in administration, in the government, my question to you is it the administration that supervises the day-to-day activities of these individuals in government?
Thank you so much. I think that's a good question. And just before I dive into your question, I'd like to point out some facts to our audience here really quick that about some of your assertions you made concerning the question. I asked you earlier, let's be very fair here. This is a fact. We've seen a lot of incompetence in this current government. That's where the struggle starts. And it starts from appointees that probably have no experience in governmental jobs, have never had governmental jobs, have never held any kind of professional job. People who were appointed by the president based on partisanship, based on praise singing and support. That being said, I want to clear the air on that. But let's get to your question here. You see, the truth of the matter is the president or the government will not have to supervise these people while they are not yet appointed. Now, it is the responsibility, again, I go back to the Senate, because their role is to conduct check and balance. If you read Article 55 of our Constitution, it gives the president the power to appoint. Yet and still, even within his appointment, it is the sole responsibility of the Senate to ensure that those appointments made by the president do not just go through easily, or they do not just go through based on partisanship or friendship. They have to be vetted. They have to ensure that they are doing a due diligence. I give you the most current example. I was very impressed when I saw the ministers on Zoli Zo's confirmation here in these few days, wherein one of the doctors from Grand Crew came out and he was very clear. He was very clear, and I could relate to him. He said he senses anger in this young man, but not only that, he senses anger in the nominee from the president, and so he thought that the president, this young man should reconsider. This man should be reconsidered. Not only that, we also saw most of the senators, they had problem with this nominee. From number one, you will see that he was not factual, so that shows that he thought he walked in there very confidently, acting as though he has already been nominated. So it is the sole responsibility of the Senate to ensure that they do this work that they've done. And so if they refuse to do that, then the burden now lies on the president, all these nominees will just pass as they've passed in the past for the past 2 years. And you will have what we have now, this chaos, the ineptitude, and you will have things not going right as a government.
Thank you, Steve.
But can I come in? Can I come in?
Quickly, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, okay. Listen, the issue of qualification, the issue of competence, the issue of integrity. Let us be reminded that we are in a political process. All these terminologies have relative meaning. Someone who is competent to you may not be competent to me. Someone who is experienced to you may not be experienced to me. So we are all in a political process. The Senate confirmation process is a political process. Decisions are made based on based on political calculations, and senators should be held responsible for the decision that they made by their constituency. But there is no constitutional definition of competence. There is no constitutional definition of qualified. There is no constitutional definition of experience. These are all relative from person to person. So the question is, what I do have a reservation with the current nomination process. let's assume from your argument, if the Deputy Defense Minister were to be confirmed by the Senate and he begins to function, and in his activities, incompetence, and other things, other negative things begin to show up, who do you hold responsible? It is the president's responsibility to review the activities of his employees.
Thank you, Mr. Kone.
It is not the executive, it is not the legislature that should go out there to review the performance of executive employees. Our system of government don't allow that.
Thank you.
It doesn't allow that.
Thank you, Mr. Kone. Steve.
Yes.
Steve, okay, go ahead quickly.
Really quick. Let me debunk what this assertion of there is no rule and regulation that governs the nominee and it is solely political, so we should close our eyes. I would say it's preposterous. It's unfair to the Liberian people for us to say that, because in every job there are requirements. There are basic requirements. There are preferred requirements. That's why when you apply for a job, you will have to go there and look at the requirements. Every job that I've known. So we can say they are political appointments, and so they are political appointments. In as much that they are political appointments, those political parties or the people responsible in charge, in this case, which is the president, should have done his vetting process to ensure that he brings forth the best candidate for that position and not based on partisan. So let's take, for example, you cannot say to us that the president nominated Zolizo on the basis of partisan. You can't say to us that the president nominated the agriculture minister on the basis of partisanship, when the current agriculture minister, who is just being appointed or was just appointed, demonstrate professionalism. She has demonstrated that she is qualified for the job. She's equipped. She's ready to do the job as compared to Zolizo. So this is a huge discrepancy.
Before we move on.
We have to ask you guys questions. No, hold on, Mr. Kone. We have to do our questioning too. It is time for us, the moderator and the audience, to ask you some questions. So whatever thoughts that you have, keep them. And as we send questions to you, you will always have the leverage to come in. All right, folks, in cyberspace, again, this is focused on Liberia. This is Debate Friday, and we are discussing the topic, who bears the greatest responsibility for any inept, unqualified, and incompetent person in government? Is it the president who appoints or the Senate that confirms? Let's lay the basis here, gentlemen. In every job, there are requirements. In every job, be it a sweeping job, there are requirements. Maybe adjusting your normal mind frame as a human being. So there are requirements. And the requirements, except somebody want to say that, oh, the president just named just about any human being. No. In this case, I would want to say there must be requirements because there is a specific task for which you appoint somebody and you want to make sure that person has the ability to perform educationally, experience-wise, suitability, character, and all these things in every job, in most jobs, are taken into serious consideration. Let's establish that. The Senate also must do the same thing, so as we can get the best and the brightest so that our government can be functional. But the debate is who bears the greatest responsibility. So our first question here is to you, Mr. Kone. You are arguing that the president bears the greatest responsibility. Fine. So if he bears the greatest responsibility, as you are saying, that means that he needs to appoint the best and the brightest and not just anybody average. Is that your argument?
I agree with you, and I want to believe that the president, whoever president, you see, I don't want to limit this discussion to a particular president because we are all discussing intellectually and academically here. It should be the role of any president to appoint people that will help that president achieve his goal. Mind you, the only constitutional standard is that appointees of the president serve at the will and pleasure of the president. All of the other things we're talking about, competence, qualification, these things are relative from person to person. The person that is qualified to you may not be qualified to me. And so that's the collective judgment the Senate will have to make. The person that is competent, that seems competent to you, may not be competent to me. The Constitution did not define any qualification for this position. The Constitution simply says the president shall waive the advice and consent of the Senate upon these people that will help him, and they shall serve at his will and pleasure. So, for example, the nominee that is under consideration, if you look at the profile of the deputy defense minister, one can make the argument that he's qualified. This is a war veteran. This is someone who has served in the United States military. This is someone who I think obtained up to a master's degree in education. This is someone who moved within the rank of the U.S. military. So someone could make that argument that he's qualified. And another person can look at the same profile and say, you know what, he's not qualified. But the key requirement is that it is the president that makes that decision. The president is the chief executive of the nation, and it is the responsibility of the president to monitor the performance of all of his cabinet officials. What the legislature has to do is to look at that profile in a snapshot and inform themselves as to whether they want to give the advice and consent to the president. Now, what I don't want that whole confirmation process to tend to is to be another opposition theater, because I think what I see emerging is that there is a dangerous sign that is emerging that we have to be mindful of. And that is a recent occurrence that an individual that expressed opposition to the government that is appointed by the very government is celebrated and assumed qualified, and whereas an individual that expresses support for the government, qualifications and competence immediately come into scrutiny. We should avoid that. Every Liberian should have a fair shot at confirmation. Every Liberian should be treated with the same standard. It doesn't matter whether you support the government or you against the government. Our definition of competency should not be people who criticize and people who praise. Let us look at the record of the individual that is being presented for confirmation. And there are some very dangerous things that are taking place with this deputy defense minister.
Mr. Koenig,
confirmation.
Mr. Koenig, if I may, before Daniel can come in, what you think is responsible for, in your own words, others celebrating the other nominee, whereas others are talking down the other nominee?
Well, the first thing we got to do is we got to look at the makeup of the Senate. The makeup, like I said, this whole process of confirmation is political.
No, I'm speaking about the public. I'm speaking about the public, because why you said my understanding is there's a public more so that's celebrating the other nominee while they are talking down on the other nominee. Why?
No, I'm not even talking about I don't want to give you that latitude. That is the public. It is the Facebook pundits of various political parties, especially parties that are in opposition to the government, that are making the celebration. In the public, ain't no public demonstrating in Liberia about one nominee being competent and the other one being incompetent. It's not public that is doing it.
Thank you.
These are, how do you call it, activists of political parties from wherever political position that are making these judgments. But what I'm saying is we have to be very careful so that the nominating process does not tend to other things that we don't intend. For example, one of the consideration or the major consideration for this deputy defense minister, it is not on his competence. No one is challenging his competence. No one is challenging his qualification. People are challenging what he wrote. Free speech. Free speech. What he wrote. That's the boom. That's the boom at confirmation. So I'm saying we should be very careful in exacting retribution for what people say. Today, it is this defense minister. Tomorrow, it could be another person who will be held liable for something that they say, something that is covered by the very Constitution. That's the point I'm making.
Thank you. Mr. Jha.
Mr. Koenig, my first question is a clarification, because you say the Constitution does not, there is no constitutional requirement. What about citizenship? if the president appoints, let's say, someone who is not a Liberian to a job, that's supposed to be occupied by a Liberian, are you saying that the Constitution does not specify any qualification for, say, ministerial appointment or someone on the Supreme Court?
You're asking a moot question. Seriously, I don't know whether you really serious are asking that question. We are talking about the government of Liberia, and the general stipulation is that the only people that will serve in the government, especially in the official echelons of the government of Liberia, will be Liberians. So that question of citizenship you're talking about is a moot question. The outcry has never been about citizenship. The outcry has always been about one person educational qualification that is deemed insufficient.
I'm going to give it that as an example. So there is a constitutional requirement.
Yeah, but that is not.
There is.
But it's a moot question. We're talking about the government of Liberia. When the citizens of the republic, citizens of the republic can be officials of the government, and that's not what the controversy is about. The controversy has always been about one person who has a very deficient academic qualification as opposed to the other. That's what the controversy has always been.
No,
it's not about citizenship.
Mr. Cooney, I'm not talking about controversy. You made a general statement that there is no constitutional requirement. I'm saying no, there is.
Except citizenship.
Okay. So now my question to you is, you are talking about supervision. What's about the question of the person coming in? If it is established, we're talking about the character, we're talking about qualification, we're talking about integrity. The Senate does vetting. So I understand your point on supervision, but what's about bringing in at the point of entry? Does the Senate not bear the greatest responsibility?
No, but this is where we all stipulated that both the president and the Senate bear some responsibility. So some of the Senate responsibility is in our screening aspect that you're talking about. But we are saying beyond the screening, where this person is now in government, implementing government policy, and it is determined that this person is not up to the task. This person cannot cannot perform the task. This person cannot execute the mandate. Who has the greatest responsibility for keeping that person in government? I thought that was the question.
No, that's not my question. My question at the point of entry, because sometimes it is established that these people have some shady character. These people, they already know maybe they are fugitive, or they have some corrupt behavior, or in their previous job they corrupted the place, or did something that of public knowledge, and the Senate decide to play a blind eye on that. At that point of entry, who bears the greatest responsibility?
Both the nominating authority and the confirmation authority bears responsibility for that. The nominating authority should do due diligence to make sure that this person is of certain level of competence and character, moral attitude, to be presented for public service. The legislature also has that responsibility to do its due diligence of advice and consent. So in that regard, both of them are responsible in that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Conan. Let me come to you, Steve. Steve, on the issue of suitability, I know your argument here is that the Senate bears the greatest responsibility because the Senate has that constitutional responsibility to reject, to deny, or not confirm. So does Senate give the president this right to just appoint anybody of his choice? And choice here meaning qualified or not, since the Senate is the one that bears the greater responsibility should anything happen?
I will say to your question, because you generalized the word appoint anybody, I will say no. And let me say why. It is important for us to try to get away from this Liberian mentality that we have for us to move forward, especially when it comes to appointments and qualifications. There is no job on the face of the earth that I know about where you just walk in and people just, because of the word suitability, people just hire you, especially at the professional level. And let us be very clear about this. Let us be very clear about some of the statements that were being made on this platform, because I believe one of the purposes of this platform is to educate our people and inform them. But we also got to be factual in our disseminations when we are communicating with our people. I would say that it is unfair for us to say that anybody can just be nominated, especially at this critical position that we are talking about honor scrutiny here. And I would say that the president has to do due diligence to get the right people on board. If we say anybody can just be nominated, and I heard Mr. Kuhn saying earlier that there is no discretion, or the Constitution does not say that. Here is the truth of the matter. Even as much as the Constitution does not speculate anything or does not bring up perimeter, the agency or the ministry has requirements. So let's go back again. I will always make reference to this because we have to be in recent time. If we keep shifting the goalposts and saying, let's go back, we're not just restricted to this other government, let's talk about other government, I think that is getting away from the fact. The factor is we must focus on what is happening now for us to be able to move forward as well. So I'll say that it is wrong for us to just get anybody based on suitability. Let's say, for example, I could work right now in a place, in Walmart or in a big organization, dress in suit and tie, cut my hair nicely and look good. Guess what happened? I'm suitable for the job because I appear a certain way. But what if I have some issues mentally? What if I'm not mentally stable? What if I don't even meet the qualification for that job? This idea of people having degree qualifies them for a job is wrong. People must be able to have experience in the field, or at least have a degree relating to that field. You can't tell me, say you have a degree as a medical doctor and then I take you and go make you a pilot. That's totally, that doesn't work like that. So in Liberia, this is what we do. And these are some of the work that the Senate has to do to ensure. I would say, to Mr. Kuhn's point, based on your question, because I really wanted to address some of those points, I would say that the Senator's decision, I would say if I were in the Senate, I would have not only based my decision on his mental state or what he said, I would have said I would also base it on his education and his experience. There was nowhere in his CV where it was noted that he served as an administrator or anything in the military. So that automatically, serving in the military does not automatically qualifies you to go into the highest position in the military as well. That is my point.
Thank you. Again, folks, in cyberspace, this is Focus on Liberia. We have just been joined by one of our panelists in person of Leo Johnson. Mr. Johnson, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And my apologies. I was dealing with some technical issues here, but thank you.
All right. Mr. Johnson notified us that he was having some technicality there, and we are happy that he has joined us. So, Mr. Johnson, welcome to the debate. We will take your initial position. Our understanding first is that you feel that the Senate bears the greatest responsibility.
The president bears
the greatest responsibility. Why so?
So first of all, let's look at the chain of why people hire people in government or bring people in government. The president has the prerogative to appoint who he feels is best suited to accomplish the job. And that suitability and qualification is not just based on what degree or what work experience the person has, because I can tell you for a fact that based on what the president is trying to achieve, his team is able to decide who could better accomplish the task. And most of these jobs, especially when it comes to administrative positions, I like to remind people, the fact that you are not a pilot or whatever does not mean you cannot be managing director for the airport and do a great job. Because at the end of the day, most of these senior level jobs is management related. It's not about the technical expertise. It's almost like when you're the president, you get to know about the military, the police, the health sector, the education sector, you alone. No, when you are the boss, when they bring you in, the qualification primarily you need is the ability to identify what type of team you need to build to execute the commands or to execute the objectives of your role, which is what the president has. The president has the full-fledged ability to put his team together to vet the people that get appointed to these positions. The Senate does not have that same level of time and due diligence. The Senate is only confirming what is submitted to them when that vetting process is over. And most of the time, the Senate is left to rely on what comes to them after that candidate is interviewed, their background is collected. So if the president's team does not do a good job in the vetting process and the Senate a certain level of documents to the Senate, The Senate is relying on it to cross-check the person if those credentials that were sent, remember the word confirm. The Senate is not appointing. The Senate is confirming. Confirming is saying, I'm verifying that these things are true and these things hold true. The president is the one who vets to say, I've vetted and I've seen these things. This is what this person is capable to do. And here is their qualification. So I cannot blame the Senate. I will only blame the Senate if they did not confirm what was given to them. The Senate, 90% of the time, will go on what is given to them, unless there are other sources of information that they can rely on.
All right, our man Steve Johnson there giving your initial position. But Steve, I have this question for you. You are saying that the Senate is there to confirm the president or the presidency does the background check and give the information to the senator. Hey, for this nominee, this is the nominee record that we have gathered, qualifications, suitability, and all that. And then the Senate will look at that information and see what is true, and then they can go about confirming. While understanding that the Senate also has a team of individuals who go about doing background check, just to make sure that what they gather is in conformity with what the president sent them, and then they can make a decision. So in that case, you think their decision should be more on what they gather or what the president sent them?
It has to be, first of all, what the president sent them. And I think their primary job is to cross-check, first of all, what the president sent them. Is it valid or invalid? Is it true or is it not true? Because here is the thing. The president's job, the Senate job, is to confirm. The Senate job is not to vet. Let's not get the two things wrong. Because at the end of the day, these people that are going to work, who do they report to? The president. They're not reporting to the Senate. Who is their boss? Who are they answerable to? Who dictates and decides what to do? Is the president. That is the reason why. Because sometimes there are some contexts that someone may know that the Senate may not know. The president may bring a certain candidate that maybe on paper does not seem, as qualified on paper, but maybe through the president's vetting is like an interview. When you go for a job interview, sometimes you outperform the interview, even though your resume was not the greatest, and you end up getting the job, even though there were other people with higher resumes, better resumes than you. So I would say to you, that the Senate cannot overly rely on external sources of information, because here is the thing. Vetting and validating information is not stuff that you do in 2 or 3 weeks, which is usually the average time the Senate has to confirm someone. The president has endless amount of time to vet his candidates and determine whether they are suitable to be sent for confirmation. So the quality of the information that the Senate should rely on must come from the president. If the president decides to sugarcoat the information and fix it up, make it look nice and everything just to get the candidate confirmed, the Senate is really in a very, limited situation to go all out and do another vetting all by themselves. That means they're circumventing the job of the president.
Thank you. Let me come to you, Mr. Cooney. The suitability word is a key word, and I think it encompasses everything that you'll be looking for in the nominee. So my question is, what is this suitability that we look for in a candidate or a nominee?
Yeah, but before I answer that question, let me just make 1 or 2 remarks. And welcome, Leo.
Thank you.
You see, this is why we have to be very careful as we discuss this topic. Because my brother there, before Leo, you see, he started going on a slippery slope of what this qualification is, what this competence is. It kept moving from one post to the other. So this is why I'm saying all of these variables are subjective from one person to the other. The only person, like Brother Leo said, who knows what they want to achieve, who knows the kind of person that they're looking for what they want to achieve, is the president. It is the president that put his team together. And this is why I said initially, the information that is available to the legislature is just a snapshot decision that they are making for that person. And in most time, the legislature end up acquiescing to the presidency, not because they don't want to do their role, but it is also in support of the principle that the president should have all the people that the president needs to do his job, to achieve his goal. So in that order of deference to the executive, most of the nomination end up passing because this is the person that the president wants to get a job done, according to the president. And the new activism that people want to push the legislature to do is what Leo spoke to. If we're not careful, we are going to turn this confirmation process to another opposition forum where now the Senate now will take on the role of deciding who the president appoints. That's not the purpose of confirmation. That's not the purpose of confirmation. Mind you, it is not only presidential appointees over which the Senate has that advice and consent. They have it over contracts, agreements. So when agreements are presented to them, they deal with the agreement that is presented to them. They don't set the agreement aside and go look for other things outside of the agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Konen. Mr. Jha, you have a question for Steve?
All right. First of all, let's establish that appointment is a political exercise. So the president will appoint people to suit himself. At times, he appoints people. I mean, we see that even right here in America, where, like the current American president talk about loyalty. So you appoint people based on loyalty. So in that sense, our current president in Liberia can appoint people from his own own locality, from his own party, from his own even ethnic group. He can do that because at his will and pleasure. So if the Senate does not check that, where are we?
Is that an open question?
Yes.
Okay, so I will take that, Mr. Jha. First of all, there's nothing unconstitutional about that the Senate should go and check. There's nothing wrong with George Weah appointing the whole government from the Kru tribe. Even though optics-wise, political optic-wise, it's not a wise idea to do because you don't want to be in a situation where you're only appointing your partisans or whatever. But there is nothing against he did not break any law if George Weah does that. And it is not the Senate's place to say, no, don't appoint people from other people from your tribe or so. It may not be good optic-wise, but as long as he's not breaking a law, the Senate's job, if the president sends nominations to the Senate, is to look at and make sure that there is no law being broken. That's why they are confirming, is to make sure that this person, first of all, has no direct red flag that is against the interests of the country or whatever that is. That's why they ask this person questions, because they want to hear from this person themselves to make sure that what they've been told or saying is consistent with what the president himself is saying. But unless the president is breaking a law, in my opinion, it's not the Senate's place to dictate to the president, because when the president fails to, when the country fails tomorrow, you know who head they're calling for? Is the president's head. So if the president would dig himself in a hole where we're making to fail, guess who they don't vote for the Senate and the president together. They vote for the president separately. He the one would be on the losing end of the election because the Liberian people do not like the way he's carrying on his job. As long as he did not break the law, I don't think it is the Senate's place to try and advise the president who to appoint from where or not.
Steve, my question to you, Steve, is what's about this idea of supervision? Okay, it is the president who appoints, and then the president also has the ability to supervise. There's a lot of things that the Senate may not catch at that point, but for the rest of the time, the president has that supervisory role. So if they are still inept, unqualified, and corrupt people in government, who's at fault?
Thank you, Mr. Jha. And I think we have to be clear that when it comes to the issue of supervision, it is not just restricted to what we think, especially in certain roles. So let's take, for example, one of the there are two roles for the Senate: check and balances and legislation. Those are the fundamental roles of the Senate. Now, what are they checking and balancing? What are they checking? And I heard my brother Leo saying that, on the information that is passed to them. I would have to agree with him on that. However, I will also add up that, they also have to use different tools and mechanisms to be able to ensure that the information that is passed on to them corroborates and meets the standard or the requirement for that job. And I would have to agree here that, politically, these things are political appointments. These appointments are political appointments. Truth of the matter. But here is the truth, though. When it comes to supervision, the president is not all over at the same time. Let's be very frank. We have heard this shift in paradigm wherein people will say, well, the president appointed them. If they're not doing a good job, you expect the president to be all over the place. Now we are talking about supervision. In itself, when you have that role of supervision, you don't just, there are certain roles, there are certain qualifications. When I heard Leo spoke earlier saying when it comes to this, they don't the technical. And when you out, look, certain positions, certain roles that are in authority, it has to come with experience. It has to come with some kind of knowledge, understanding of the job, because you are going to be leading people. It's not just your nature or your intuition that you're going to use there. We all have intuitions and different natures, truth, but you don't always use your intuition. There are some technical areas that you have to use experience, knowledge, and skills to be able to ensure that these things move forward. So let us not come with this notion of it is the president's responsibility. I understand that if they are confirmed, it becomes the president's supervision and his prerogative at that point. But yet they are not being confirmed. What has to be done is the Senate has to ensure the full responsibility of ensuring that they do not just confirm anybody or anything or at any point, whether that treaty or whatever it is, to say because it is the president's prerogative and because it is a political thing, the Senate should just work with the president, just allow this. This has been one of our major problems, and we need to ensure that the Senate is empowered independently to check and balance any nominee from the president, regardless of their political affiliation or their support to the president or the party. And that's where I stand on this argument.
Thank you. Again, folks, in cyberspace, this is focused on Liberia and it's Debate Friday. And for today's debate, we are discussing or debating who bears the greatest responsibility for any incompetent, inept, and unqualified person in government. Is it the president who appoints or the Senate that confirms? Very soon, gentlemen, we'll be taking some questions and comments from our phone lines. So get ready, Mr. Jai. Should we go or take some more questions?
But
let's let Mr. Cooney make his point, and then we can open our phone lines.
All right, yeah, Mr. Cooney, quickly.
Listen, the reason why we're having this discussion is the very nature of our politics and the very nature of our of the current arrangement of the Senate. Yes, we have a government where political parties participate, but we have a unique legislature in which we don't have this minority party stuff in our own legislature. Because if the situation was in a way where we have a majority party and a minority party, then all of these discussions we have no relevance, as we see here. The party that controls the majority in the Senate rubber stamps all the president appointee because they belong to the same political party. They belong to the same political ideology. And like I think Dennis said, appointments to these high political positions are done for different reasons. They are done for loyalty. They are done for contribution to the candidate. They are done for social affiliation. They are done. These people that are appointed at that level are not the technicians that are supposed to actually carry on the functions of those entities. So we are having this discussion because of the unique nature of our own political process, where we have a Senate where no party control. You have senators that come from different backgrounds, and even the current government is a minority in the Senate. So you have all these groupings with different interests trying to exert their own political position on the process. But in a real democracy that functions where you have parties controlling Congress based on minority basis, the whole question of who qualify, who competent, it's appointments are confirmed by the party that has the majority in parliament. That is done. That's the politics. And the people, they will have their chance to react to that kind of politics at the ballot box. They make their decision.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. Mr. Jai, let's take our first caller here, and the caller will be posting will be for Leo. Let's see. Caller, your name and where you joining us from. Hello, caller. Oh. Oh, guys.
Go ahead, caller. You are live.
This is Kevin Dewa. I'm calling from Texas.
Go ahead.
Mr. Jai and CA and to your guest in studio, I want to say thank you for this topic. But the constitutional writer did not make a mistake in writing our constitution. Because I'm sure they knew that these days, some of these things will have come by. That is the reason why they did not just put all of the power in the president who does the appointment. If they had just said the president does the appointment and they just go to work right away, it would have been a mess, it would have been a chaos in Liberia. That is the reason why powers was vested into the senators to do the confirmation. And define the word confirmation. Leo came in studio, he just defined the word confirmation. Verification. If you do a piece of job at your job site and someone come and verify, you and the person who does the greatest responsibility. The senators, for heaven's sake, I see no reason why some of these arguments even come on the floor. The senators bear the greatest responsibility in this confirmation. That is the reason why you see the Liberian government right now as a goal. The reason why you see some of these people who are in government who are not like unqualified, like Moses was just saying in studio there. I mean, that's one of the reasons because the senators have not been doing their job. Our job, for heaven's sake, this is a modern world. This is a modern world we find ourselves in. If anyone comes to you and say, this is my resume, the senators can do themselves a very good job, a very better job by following up on these resumes. Confirmation hearing is not done in 1 day's time after the appointment is made. Sometimes it takes months. It takes weeks. The senators can use those time, the time to their disposal to do more search on these people and do a better confirmation. If the senators can do a better confirmation and continue to do a better, the Liberian government will always be good at its best. It would always be to its best. So the argument about who bears the greatest responsibility, in my mind, I would tell you, the senators. That's the reason why the constitutional writer made it clear and say the senators should confirm after the president makes his appointment. Confirmation, for heaven's sake. It's like someone doing verification. So you can't tell me the appointment is greater than someone who will go and verify that you did a piece of job and that the job is correct and give you a passing mark. The senators give the passing mark. And because the senators give the passing mark, it does not matter who does the appointment. The senator who gave the passing mark bears the greatest responsibility. Remember, the senators are serving as the voice of the people. You see?
Thank you.
Thank you, Cassidy. Let Leo respond to that.
All right.
Yeah, let me respond to it first of all, Cassidy. You're very right, and thank you for your point that confirmation means to verify that something is true. But where you lost me is for you to tell me that the person who's actually doing the work versus the person who's going to come in to inspect that the work is true or is verified. The person who's verifying is doing a greater job than the person who's doing the work. I beg to actually defer. Because if the person who's supposed to do the work did not do their job in the first place, there will be no verification to be done or not. So what I'm saying, if the person who's supposed to
decide whether the job is done right or not.
Yeah, let me just finish. The person who's supposed to verify is just supposed to verify. So if the president sends a candidate to the Senate with the right resume and all of the stuff on it, right? And the resume is not proof that somebody can do a piece of job. I keep reminding you, even if all the things on the resume are correct. And the Senate make their calls and do their checks. And yes, the man graduated from the school. Yes, the man worked to this place. Yes, the man worked to this place. So it's not about them judging the morale of the resume or saying, can we prove that the man can really do this job or not? How do we do that? We can only tell from his resume. So that's why I said the Senate only works with the information that they have, and their job is to verify that information. Now, you also got to remember that the Senate's job in confirmation is to make sure the president has the team in place that can deliver on what the president wants to do. So the president has the prerogative of selecting the people. There is no job description in our constitution that says for somebody to be on a certain job, they must have a master's degree. Let's be frank. That's what I said. The president is breaking no laws. Optics-wise, morally, it may not make sense to you or whatever that is. But if the president broke no law, but the president has confidence in his person to deliver this job, it is not the Senate's place to dictate to the president and say no, because the president does not have a master's degree. Let me give an example. Ben Carson in the United States, his file is housing, national housing. Ben Carson is a doctor. He's a medical doctor, a brain surgeon. He's never worked in the field of housing before. But what Ben Carson has is executive experience. So when I didn't say people should not have experience, people should have the right experience, and that experience does not have to be related to the particular field. Ben Carson is the director for national housing in the United States. He's never held anything related to that in his life. He's been a brain surgeon for his whole life. But he's serving as that right now.
Hold on, Mr. Jai, hold on. Let me. I have a follow up here because
I have a follow up for Leo.
Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Johnson, you are saying just in case of the verification, you are talking on the positive side. But what if the Senate verifies and find that that resume is flawed, is being forged, and still the Senate goes ahead and confirms that person? Who bears the greatest responsibility in that case?
So then the Senate did not do its job in that particular case. But what I'm telling you is that you cannot just verify someone wholesomely based on a resume. That is mine. If something is falsified, then that's breach of the law. That's a whole different case. Right. If somebody goes ahead and do something fraudulently, then maybe they also deceive the president. That's breach. And the president, the reason I say the Senate is at fault for not doing its job. It's not a fault for an inept person being appointed into government, because it was the president's responsibility to vet what's supposed to be. If you send something fraudulent, if I am your supervisor and you did something fraudulent and I went ahead and promoted you after you did something fraudulent, I am responsible. If the overall president of the company finds out that I promoted you after a fraudulent act, I, the supervisor, become the first person to get fired because I failed to do my due diligence before promoting someone to a higher position in a company.
And that's the role of the Senate.
The role of the Senate is the overall. The president appoints. He cannot approve. The Senate approves. So if the president sends somebody who is fraudulent to the Senate,
the president does not know. The president does not know. So the Senate is expected to catch that.
Ignorance to the law is not an excuse. So the president not knowing that this person was fraudulent, the Senate job is to confirm. So if the Senate fails to confirm, but the question you asked was who is responsible for inept people being appointed to government? That was the question that you asked directly. Who bears the greater responsibility? So I did not say the Senate does not bear a portion of the responsibility. No, they bear a portion. But the question we are addressing is who bears the greatest responsibility? The Senate, first of all, does not have the capacity to do the level of verification and deep verification that the president has and is able to actually do. They don't. The Senate is limited with the tools that's at their disposal that they can use to verify or not. So if anybody has a greater chance of catching something fraudulent, it should be the president and not the Senate.
All right.
So quick question. Can I chip in on something here? Because I'm a little confused about Leo's point here. It is either Leo is concurring with me or Leo might be trying to confuse us. The reason I say this is this. Leo can say a few minutes ago that the Senate does not have the requisite time to be able to verify this information. But then in a little time again, comes back. I know for sure Leo and Mr. Kuhn have agreed that the president can nominate and he can do this, and the Senate is just to verify. That has been the point. Now, my question is, this entire issue of verification or check and balance, it's not just based on degree or something. It's a holistic consideration. So that being said, I want to say here to you that it is important for us to understand that the Senate bears the greater responsibility, either because the Senate does not know that it bears a greater responsibility to do this check and balance and tell the president, say, we cannot have this. It's like an HR personnel. Even if you went and demonstrated very good and your resume was not good, like Leo would say, and you demonstrated very good, you perform or you outperform, because some people are naturally, they can act or they can do stuff. But if when the managers meet with you, they don't tell you on the spot you're hired. They will tell you HR will get back with you. Let me tell you why they tell you HR will get back with you. It is important that they take this information to the HR for the HR to be able to make sure they corroborate, verify, and make sure that in as much as the information of the managers that was brought to them is brought, and these things are double checked. The Q's and I's are double checked. So let's say, for example, if the HR went ahead and just take the words of the managers and say, yes, we agree for this guy to be hired, we agree for Steve to be hired because we've been working with this manager, and they forgot about something, and that person goes and do something wrong. What happens is that it comes back to the HR. In the case of the government today, Liberian people are blaming the president. They're blaming the president for almost everything. When the truth of the matter is, the president should not be blamed for everything, because you know what? The Senate had a bigger responsibility to tell the president, Mr. President, we cannot agree. And in our country as we speak right now, one of the problems is the president has been interfering, whether directly or indirectly, with a decision of the Senate, whether it is on a partisan level or not. That is what has been causing the confusion, and the Senate has not been standing up or doing the job. But I thank God that maybe they are awakening a little bit now to be.
So let me make a quick correction. A quick correction I want to make. I did not talk about Senate having time or not. I said it did not have the tools and the resources to do the level of vetting that the executive branch of government has to actually do, because it is the executive branch of government primary responsibility. But let me use your own example of the HR manager. No company will have an HR manager makes a recommendation as after all the interviews who to hire. The managers, overall bosses of the company will never make a decision in isolation of the HR manager's recommendations. If they have any questions, they will go to the HR manager and say, we have series of questions that we need you to clarify before we approve you, or whatever that is. The HR managers clarify. It is the HR manager recommendation the bosses rely on, because they are the ones who see the person every day. They are the ones who went through all of the interviews. The Senate were not there for all of the interviews of this candidate. Right. The Senate was not there for all of the various vetting processes. So if you want to say the Senate might become the new body that does the in-depth vetting of a candidate, then don't call it a confirmation. Then we should have to change the Constitution of the Republic of Liberia to allow the senator to be going after people individually to vet them and decide whether or not they should get the job. That's not the job of the Senate. And I humbly disagree with you, that I concur with you that the Senate bears a greater responsibility. I never said that. I said the president bears the greatest responsibility. That's what I said.
Gentlemen, sorry. Mr. Coonan, hold on. Let's bring in the caller, and then you will respond to the caller comment or question. And then whatever you have, you can claim that. Okay, let's take this one. Caller, your name and where you joining us from.
This is Aliyu Kamara calling out of Maryland. How do you do, sir?
We're doing great, and straight to the issue. You have 1 minute.
Yes, I was trying to stay within the 1 minute. Mr. Leo, I think Mr. Leo is misleading the people. Let me buttress Mr. Bully. I think Bully is speaking the real issue here, in my opinion, and I stand to be corrected. Well, we keep using the word verify. We are narrowing the whole function here. The Senate, the job is not limited to verifying. The Senate also have the power to investigate. The Senate does not have to work within the confines of the information given to it by the president. If the Senate finds anything outside of what the president or the executive branch presented to it, it has the right on those bases to deny any kind of confirmation. So if we just reduce this to verification, to verify, it's like we're trying to mislead the people. The issue of the HR thing, you just concorded with Moses. Okay? Nobody hires other than HR anyway. So the manager your manager interviews you, but the HR is the one that hires you. So why are you agreeing, but then acting like you're giving a whole line of discretion that doesn't go with the issue? Let's just use the United States for an example. We had an issue of a chief justice being appointed by Mr. Trump in recent time. Okay, the information that Mr. Trump gave the Senate did not mention anything about a rape that happened back in the 70s. The Senate investigated about the rape issue, even though it was not founded, but they investigated about a rape issue outside of the information given to it by the executive branch of government. So let us remove the word verify. The Senate can go behind that man from the high school days that the president knows nothing about and still deny him on the grounds of that. Thank you very much.
All right. Mr. Coonan, I guess somebody said something, and the way I sum it up is that the Senate is the final checkpoint. So this should bear the greater responsibility. You disagree? Why?
No, the Senate is not a final checkpoint. We have to understand our constitutional order. The Senate does not hire officials for the executive. We have to understand that. The Senate does not appoint officials for the executive. All appointment in the executive is made by the executive, is made by the president, and it is sent to the Senate for advice and consent. Now, let us be very clear here. in the confirmation process, if there are issues of high morality and high criminality that either escape the executive, that comes alive during the confirmation process, those are legitimate issues to address. No one is saying that the Senate cannot address those issues. What we are saying here now is that there are people arguing that the Liberian Senate now should now be the theater to determine competence, to determine experience, to determine qualification. There is no provision of our Constitution that gives the Senate that much power. To agree that the Senate has that kind of power is to supplant our Constitution, is to supplant the role of the president in our system of government. So, yes, I agree with most of the things that Leo said. The confirmation process is based on the information provided, just like as in the concession agreement that are presented or other agreements. Now, in the review process of those agreements, if there are other important issues that come out that may render either the agreement illegitimate or that may render the appointment illegitimate or that is fundamentally flawed, the Senate can act. But this new court, where now the Senate must be in a position to determine the experience of an individual, must be in a position to determine the qualification of a political appointee.
Who's making this new call? You keep emphasizing this new call. Who's making it?
There's a new call we're discussing. It's a new call that we're discussing now. That's why it's been discussed again by the Facebook political pundits and by some element of the opposition. That now our legislature, the Senate now, must now be the ground to vet, to appoint, to determine all of these things. Mind you, the president has the executive authority to administer the affairs of the state.
Mr.
And in recognition of that executive authority, the Constitution gave the president the power to appoint individuals that will serve at his will and pleasure to implement the mandate of the president. The Senate is to confirm if individuals say they graduate from this school, if that individual graduate from the school. If somebody lie, then it's a crime. Nobody is saying that the Senate should countenance criminal behavior. Is that what we're talking about? But this new advocacy is that the Senate now must be the one to determine qualification, competence, experience. Those things may not even be the consideration of the president. Like Mr. Jal rightfully said, the president will appoint somebody based on loyalty. Based on loyalty.
Thank you, Mr. Kone. Mr. Jal, we have an international caller. Can we take that quickly?
Definitely.
All right. Call out your name and where you're joining us from.
Yeah, thank you so much, my brother. This is Willem Bro calling from France.
Straight into the issue, Mr. Bro.
Yeah, you see, my brother, the president carried a high responsibility. And you see, we're trying to practice our democracy. Let's first understand what is political party. Political party is a government in waiting. And it comes in with a manifesto, a platform. And within the party, they have what we call ideologues that believe in that manifesto. Now, that's the ideologues you recruit to become directors, ministers, deputy minister, or what we call presidential appointees. People who believe in that ideology to implement the platform. That whole platform can turn to what we call national agenda. Let's take, for example, now the Pro-Po agenda. Now, each of those senators in the House came from different political parties with different ideology. So those senators don't have the power to stop the president appointment. The only thing they can do is what we call confirmation. And when they think they call confirmation mean, let me confirm what are the information the nominee gave to the president is truth. For example, if the nominee say he or she graduated from AG High School and Harvard University, the Senate only confirm. If they're looking at my attention and say, okay, I will confirm it to know whether it's true or not. When it is true, the Senate had nothing else to do but to say okay to the person. The Senate got nothing to do with how the person will implement the president's agenda because most of the senators are not ideologue to the president. the president have an agenda to accomplish. Only his comrade ideologues will accomplish the agenda along with him. So that politics that people bring into the governance space of our country is dangerous. Because if you do so, then meaning that no political party will be coming in with platform again. Meaning when we win, let the senator dictate how the country will run. That's why the Constitution even gave a room for the president that if even you denied the president nominee, the president has the power to make that person to act outside of your approval of the Senate, because the law is the crafter of democracy understand very well that the president is going in with a plan. And the only group of people that can implement that plan is people who he trusts, who came from his background, his ideologues. So people confronting confirmation with other things. Let people stop confronting it. People are setting a dangerous precedent for our democracy that they will not be able to maintain in the long run. We must be truthful for our country to move forward.
William.
Senators are there to confirm. They are not there to deny the presidential appointee based on their own perception or how or maybe the president going with their ideology. Your ideology is different from your political party. The people rejected your manifesto. That's why your president didn't win. The president has win that the manifesto the people accepted.
Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, are you suggesting that just about any person, be a flaw or not, the Senate should just confirm because that's what they are there for?
The Senate, I just make it clear. The Senate confirmation is based on three major objectives. The first objective is qualification. The second objective is competence. And the other one is just listen to you on a formality, how you going to do it. That one is just morale. But the major one is confirmation. Let's say, for example, you there in studio. If the president appoints you information minister and you present to the president, say you graduate from university, you work to the other place here, you work to the other place here, you work to the other place here, and the president vet you. And then the president send all the documents to the House of Senate. Say this is the resume of this nominee. The Senate only there to confirm, meaning to verify what are the information the president gives.
All right.
Or the person gives to the president is true or not.
Thank you, Mr. Bro. Thank you for your contribution.
When the Senate found out, for example, now, when the Senate found out that you lied, that's why the Senate can reject you, because it is under our law, it is wrong for you to lie, to say you graduated from a place and you didn't graduate. Or you went to the place and you didn't work. So meaning that you bring in fraud back to the governance system. That's when the Senate can reject you. But the Senate cannot reject you based on ideological difference.
Mr. Brown, thank you. Thank you for your contribution.
Can I just clarify something, if you don't mind?
Yeah, quickly.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll be very quick.
Steve,
I just want to
respond to that question.
You want me to respond? Oh, Steve, yes. Steve, go ahead. Steve, go ahead. I can clarify after Steve.
No, Leo, go ahead and clarify, please.
Okay.
And I'll respond.
I just want to make a quick clarification for the previous caller that talked about the Supreme Court appointee that was rejected because of rape. This was as a result of a citizen's complaint, right? So this person was appointed. The president did not catch the issue of rape, whether or not, didn't go to the Senate. A citizen filed a formal complaint to the Senate against this appointee. So the Senate decided to investigate that. The second thing I would say is, the reason the Senate does not bear the greatest responsibility, because let's say the Senate did not catch something, they did not do their job, and they confirm a candidate, and the candidate went into government, and the candidate is performing dismally because they are inept. Only one person can fire that candidate, than the president. So there are still multiple opportunities to have it corrected, and the president has more leeway of correcting this, because even if the president is confirmed, if they don't perform correctly in the first 2 months, the president can decide to fire the president. He does not need the Senate approval or acquiescence to fire them. So he bears the greater responsibility.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes, I think the greatest damage has been done, and I think we got to do the right thing. And I will have to agree with Mr. Kuhn here that we have to be careful with our words. I listened to the brother, and this is not a right or wrong thing. This is not a pundit and opposition thing. This is something that we need to reawaken as a nation. I believe so, 100%. With that being said, I think what people are misunderstanding is people think that maybe if the president appoints that person or those people should be automatically let go, or all the senators are there for. Maybe that's how they've been teaching or talking to our senators, or maybe that's how they feel that the president can just appoint anybody, which is truth. But here is the truth, though. What is the standards we are using to appoint? And that's the question I asked Mr. Kuhn here earlier on. What has been the government's recruiting process? What has been the government's recruiting process? What have been the mechanism put in place? And we have to understand that if we would say the senators or the Senate does not bear the bigger responsibility than the president, or because we are waiting for the Senate to just confirm, and just let these guys go, like one of my brothers said earlier, that without investigation, then what we are doing is we are setting the president up for failure, and we are setting the nation up for failure. And that's what I see in this present government. This is what I've come with this point to say. The Senate bears the greatest responsibility, because if you look in Article 38, we come to understand that both houses have even been given the power to create committees. Why are these committees created? Why are they created? They are created so that they can be able to make sure they exercise their constitutional right in the areas of check and balances to help the president. The Senate doing the right thing is helping the president enhance his agenda. I will go back to give you a typical example these few days. Madam Jenny Cooper, who was nominated for agriculture, I saw no noise from both the opposition and the ruling party. There was no noise. You know why? Because we believe our president brought the best from within Liberia. And you know what? The Senate had no option. I dare the Senate to have refused to confirm that lady. The Senate probably would have been in the biggest trouble in the history, in the history of Liberia. So it is incumbent upon the Senate to do the right thing. And the Senate is the last boss and stop and the checking point for any responsibility in especially if the president nominates. Yes, sir.
See, and maybe it's because of why you always remind us that Liberian women are the most beautiful. Maybe because she's beautiful, that's why. Anyway, that's just a joke. Let's go to our phone line here. Dennis, let's take this one. Been waiting for 25 minutes now. Call out your name and where you joining us from.
My name is Ben, and I'm calling from Minnesota.
All right, you have 1 minute, Ben.
Oh, 1 minute, okay. Yeah, so what I would like to say is that with regards to the senators and the president, but there was one person you guys left out, and that is the president himself, who will be going through the interview. I think that person should be held liable first before any other, because it is that person who themselves know whether they are killable or not. For the fast forward, when you look at the Senate, because I think this question that you asked has to do with what happened in the Senate recently. And I think I will hold them liable, because the way the Senate themselves ask questions, the way how they themselves behave, tells me that they themselves are not informed. And because they're not informed to a lot of, to a lot of things that they should be asking their nominee, I think I will hold them liable when anything goes wrong.
All right, thank you. Our caller is saying that the Senate bears the greater responsibility. Thank you for your contribution there. Let's come to you, Leo. Take that one.
Yeah, let me take it quickly. I keep reminding people keep forgetting that our three branches of government has very distinct functions, right? My brother Steve Bole just said, what are the processes? What are the standards for recruiting these people? It is the executive that set those. It's not the Senate's job. So the reason the executive bears a greater responsibility is because the executive has almost 80% of all of the things that are supposed to be done to determine who gets appointed. The Senate got like 20% of it to get done. And even if the Senate made up, it's one thing. Let's not confuse with the Senate not doing its job to mean that they bear the greater responsibility. Let's not equate that, if the Senate is not doing, so I'm not here debating that the Senate is doing its job. I'm just saying to you that even if the Senate does not do its job, does not automatically equate to them bearing the greater responsibilities. Because why? The president has the opportunity to vet properly prior. If he misses anything that comes to the Senate and the Senate did not do their job and confirm, he still have the opportunity to fire. There's no best evidence to fire somebody than their performance. It's their performance that proves whether the president was good. Even the Janine Cooper that you're talking about, you don't know this. You are making all these assumptions that she's one of the best the nation ever has to approve. She's just getting in the job. We're going to see the fruit of her labor. We said this before of other presidential nominees in the past, that they were the best anybody has to offer, and we saw them feel flat. There are other circumstances that may make her job very difficult, and she may not be able to accomplish it. So I will say to you, the president has 80% of the power in determining who gets appointed. The Senate has 20%. So to him who much is given, much is required.
All right, Mr. John, any time for comments? To read some comments? Our Facebook viewer might be getting angry with us. Yeah, Mr. Kunin, you go first while then they get ready to read some comments. Mr. Kunin, quickly.
No, I think we've actually beaten this point to death. I mean, it is clear that in this scenario that we're describing, the president has the greatest responsibility. The president has the greatest responsibility prior to the nomination, and the president maintains that responsibility after the nomination is passed. And again, even though Dennis will ask me who and what, because he always asks me those questions, this whole idea of trying to shift the responsibility here is not done in a vacuum. It is a carefully calculated ploy by very clever people that are determined to supplant the power of the presidency and transfer it to the executive and transfer it to the legislature. And we have to be mindful of that. There are people now, for some reason, that are beginning now to entertain the view that it is the legislature that must determine those who serve in our government based on their own subjective idealism. Because what is competent to them may not be competent to the president. What is qualified to them may not be qualified to the president, who really needs these people to work with these people. So we have to be very careful. And my brother said we should speak to some of the current issues. I am still waiting to hear if the deputy defense minister is not confirmed, what would be the reason? And the only reason that is leading the chat is someone's interpretation of her Facebook page, which I consider free speech. And the Senate can very well do that. But we should always be mindful that it will begin to exact retribution on free speech at the level of the Senate. My concern is, at what other areas in our national politics will we be exacting retribution for free speech? Our people say free speech is free. I mean, most of the things that we talk freely may not be against the law. This is why people look at actions. It is most of the time things that are against the law are actions that we take. If I tell you right now, Mr. Moderator, you play with me, I will slap you. It's not against any law for me to say that. But when I actually slap you, it is against the law. So there is an ongoing concern in the Liberian Senate today, where an appointee is not being evaluated on some of the core issues we're talking about here. Is he qualified? Does he have the experience to do what the president is saying here to do? Everybody is saying what he wrote on Facebook. And there is even the audacity for people to prescribe mental health treatment from their Senate chair, looking at somebody and say, oh, you look traumatized. That is dangerous. We have to improve the discourse that we have with one another. I can just look at somebody and say, oh, you look at you got mental health problem.
Thank you, Mr. Kunin.
Benefit of a diagnosis from any professional.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
And the Liberian senator is sitting down there looking at a Liberian and say, oh, you look traumatized.
Thank you, Mr. Kunin. You were talking about free speech. Maybe those senators were also, hold on, Steve. You were talking about free speech. Maybe those senators were also exercising their free speech.
And I recognize that, but I'm not expecting any retribution on that senator.
Mr. Ria, please read some comments, and then I have something to say for our panelists.
Okay, let me read some comments here, even though Mr. Kunin tried to pin me against the wall by saying that I will ask him why He's trying to prevent me, but it's not true. Okay, this is a comment from Sharon Kepat Gapu. Say the Senate does the most. They confirm them, President appoints, and they are like final step to having the President's appointment given a job. The Senate has all right to make sure that appointments don't pass confirmation if they are not qualified, competent, experienced, or moral aptitude. Josephine Doe Wesley say, in the case of the Nigerian man who was appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate, is because they did not do a proper background check and see now what is coming out for him. So the Senate bears most of the responsibility. We stay reading here. Tell Cole say it is a shared responsibility. However, the Senate serve has good internal controls or roadblocks should there be a violent threat or risk. Let me get more comments down here. This is Victor Gatakoli. He says something very derogatory in one of his comments. This one, which we don't want to encourage, so I'm not going to read it. But that's Gasikbili. That's Victor Gatakoli. So Victor, please don't make those kind of comments here. All right. Benjamin Jonas said, every government in the world appoints people in their parties. And the final comment for now, Telco say, having education or degree is not the only qualifying factor. Hanson Brooks say, you may be overqualified for a job, but it is your character that matters the most.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jada, reading some comments. Panelists, I got some things packaged for you, and each of you will react to them. The issue of open hearing or televised hearing, the Zolizo confirmation hearing, I watched it, and I was happy about it, that we, the public, get to see what the nominee had to say and what the questions the senators have to ask. And based on us getting two sides of the entire scenario, whatever decision comes out, we can be able to make our own judgment. I want you to respond to that and see whether that is something that we should encourage. The other thing is conflict of interest. And then looking at conflict of interest and other things, on what basis can the Senate reject or deny it? Let's start with you, Leo.
Yes. So let me talk about the open hearing first. I think I encourage the open hearing. That's one of the tenets of democracy, transparency. The only time anything should be secluded from the public's eye if it has to do with national security or something sensitive that could be damaging or that needs to be controlled. But I don't think there's anything wrong with confirming a candidate in an open hearing like they actually did. The only thing I have a problem with, I will say, I think what people are not getting is this. First of all, I must say, Zolizo himself performed poorly. If that was a job interview, let's take everything aside. He performed poorly. Because when the Senate asks, I don't think there is a problem with the Senate asking about a Facebook video that was brought to them that they felt was alarming. I don't think there's a problem with that. I think what should have happened was Zolizo was supposed to admit, since it was true, that yes, I did that. But here's what I meant when I did that. And if he wanted to apologize or not, that's up to him. And then see whether the Senate would make a decision based on that. But I think where the thing got juicy was when Zolizo decided that he would deny that he ever said that. After giving so many tries, I said it and said that has nothing to do with my actual job. But you're lying on an oath, because when you're on that chair, they told him, player, you are on the oath. The Senate asks you a question, you determine. So I think open hearings are good for our democracy. They are transparent enough, and they also help to educate us, because sometimes we all don't know how these things work and what happened behind closed doors. This is the reason why we're having this debate today, because of the openness of those hearings, or else we wouldn't have known what actually went on in there. Conflict of interest. I would clearly say this to everybody. The appearance in professional standards, the appearance of conflict of interest is conflict of interest. They usually say, do not even allow it to appear as if there is a conflict of interest. The problem we are having, Anthony, is that we have no practical standards set for how these things are defined and how to capture them. Even when it comes to our appointments and our hiring, it is executive that actually set those rules. The Senate does not have a rule that say you must be a master's degree holder, you must be a BSc holder, you must be a PhD holder for us to actually appoint you. So sometimes when we make these remarks, now, how is this person qualified? How is this person, why the person does not have this kind of experience and this kind of background? The Senate executes their role within the confines of the Constitution. And if the Constitution gives them unlimited latitude to do whatever they have to do, you may not agree with it. You may say it's wrong. But that's their constitutional right to choose which option within the confines of the Constitution to use. If you do not like it, then you need to tighten the rules around how they should be allowed to actually behave. But you can't say the Senate should go out and go be vetted. You know how long it takes to properly vet somebody? You know what resources? It almost become the Senate full-time job because it can take you up to 6 months to properly vet one candidate. So that means the president will not get anybody. That's the reason why we all hope. And it's ascribed to the executive to do the hardest part of the job and make the Senate role to confirm much more practical on the merits of the achievement of the candidate or the qualifications of the candidate, or if there is a crime committed or if there is something inappropriate or red flag that the Senate should not allow to pass.
Thank you, Leo. Mr. Bole, unmute yourself. We're talking about televised hearing, open hearing, conflict of interest. On what basis can we deny a candidate, or should a candidate be denied or rejected?
So really quick, before I tap into that question, I'd just like to move on here from something that was said by Mr. Kuhn here that I think needs some clarification, because we are in the public domain. It's important for us to disseminate information properly. The issue of one of the senators, I think Senator Coleman, pointing out that, he thinks Zolizo at that time had so much anger and, he needs to address it. I think he spoke as a professional person. I got to know that he's an MD. And one of the things that we don't understand is, let me say this, he knew what he was talking about, because when we get referrals for psychological treatment or mental health treatment, most of the times we get some of them from physicians or, primary care doctors. Most of the times they refer them because they've checked them medically, and maybe they find out that, and some of the attributes I exhibit, sometimes we are trained professionals to be able to pick them up just from people's behavior. So I would say the environment was not correct. Yeah. But for his professional discretion, yeah, he was exactly right. I would say that he was exactly right. Would I have said it in that domain? Me? Maybe not. But let's get to the issue. I think I would agree with Leo that it is important for us to to do this to enhance transparency and accountability as well, because then it gets us involved into our democracy. It helps a lot. I think it's a good thing. I also think that they should have a process to do this, and make sure that the media outlets that will be broadcasting these things are also selected to some extent. Having everybody go in, let them put in a system in place to make sure that it's done properly. That would be it. But the idea of it is good. Now, and then I would have to agree with Leo too that just the perception of any form of compromise or anything, that's it. Don't even give people don't even try to do that. Don't even try it. Like, let's take, for example, the other time we saw in Liberia, one of our traditional cultures or whatever it is, when people go with brown envelope, it turn into corruption or compromise. And we saw a picture propagated. I don't know how true is that picture, but I'm just saying, for example, we saw a picture during the county meeting, the president holding brown envelope and shaking. Optics are very important, and shaking another team's manager or player hand or whatever it might have been. Optics are very important. What is sent out, the notion is sent out is, the president is trying to, interfere with this or whatever it is. So it is critically important that we, people in the media or other places that are around the president manage these things. But
Thank you, Steve. There is something
I want to learn on. I want to disagree. I want to disagree with this idea that the president is the last boss check. So I give you a typical example. Samuel Twe, over the last few months, 24 months, he has been unable to settle this economy. And then on top of it, our 25 million taken from the US here in our account, the Liberian people's account, was not accounted for adequately. And you still get him there, even though some people from the opposition, even from the CDC, have said Samuel Twe should go. The president, because of the sympathy of
Yes, thank you, Steve. Point made. I don't mean to cut you off, but we have to close. Mr. Cooney, hold on. Let's squeeze in these two callers quickly, Mr. Cooney, and then we will get you in. Let's take this one. Caller, your name and where you joining us from?
My name is Asumana Thomas from Baltimore. I have two questions for the panelist.
Quickly.
Was Zolizo talking the truth about not holding any other passport when he was asked the question? The second question is, Zolizo said he served almost 10 years in the military of the United States, and he said his status did not change. Was he saying the truth also? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's take this other one quickly, Mr. Ja. That would be Yala. Quickly.
Yeah, this is Alex Yala calling from Eastern Pennsylvania.
Quickly.
Yeah. First of all, let me join Steve Boley to say yes. Virtue of the responsibility of giving the two separate branches of government that is headed by the president and also the senators. The senator, when it comes to confirmation or it comes to appointment and in government position, the Senate bear a very, very, very great, the greatest responsibility, or the greater responsibility than the president. So let me put it that way. And it's very simple. Okay, I heard somebody talk. I think Mr. Cooney was talking about partisan. Somebody called and spoke about ideological differences and all that kind of stuff. Yes, the Constitution empowers the president to appoint, but you will see that not all the appointments the president made have to that have to go for confirmation. And it will be clear that they appoint you to this position, pending confirmation if necessary or where necessary. So if there's a checkpoint, okay, if there's a checkpoint, that checkpoint is erected for a purpose, and the purpose is to verify, is to authenticate every information you provided to the president or to whoever before you got that appointment. The Senate is there to verify those things, and when they find out, when they see any hole in that, it is a responsibility to make that notification and also stop you. So yes, they bear the greater responsibility, and if they don't see those things and the people then they slip through the crack and go and start performing badly, like you guys asked the question, we start seeing the ineptness and all that kind of stuff. Yes, we'll bring the Senate seriously because there's no reason why they will forward anybody to the Senate for confirmation if there's no responsibility or they're not going to be bearing responsibility whether or not the person is qualified. Now, when we come to the point of the power of how they call it to a point, like Leo was saying, I don't think it's the argument yet. I don't think the debate is not about who has the power to appoint. The appointment lies within the purview of the president. But again, confirmation will also lie within the purview of the Senate. So the Senate has to be very keen. They have to listen to the appointee. They verify the documents you send. They deduce from even your verbal statement whether you're saying true or not. They find out whether you're lying on or not, and they make that decision. So yes, like somebody came about, I think it was Connie or one or other Leo said, even to the extent where the Senate can will come to deny somebody, the president can say veto and say I'll keep the person. Yes, that's the Constitution. You get the power, but again, that does not preclude the fact that the Senate has the greater responsibility to make sure that the right person is in the right place. Now, what I'm trying to say in short is not that, but the virtue of the fact that the Senate will say yes, the guy is clear or the lady is clear, means that you're going to perform effectively. That's the point I want to agree with Leo, because you can come and perform very, your performance can be very splendid. You still go take the job and do nothing,
Thank you.
But the bottom line, the Senate, possess the greater responsibility when it comes to confirming people who will not perform well. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take this one quickly. Quickly to the issue, caller. We are running out of time. Quickly. Hello, caller.
Who is it?
Hello there.
Hello.
Yeah, are you ready?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Quickly, your question or comment.
Okay. Well,
your name.
Well, yeah, comment and then question for.
And your name, please.
One of the guys there, Leo.
And your name, where are you calling from? Quickly.
I'm calling from Texas. My name is Selvina.
Go ahead, Selvina.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. So I just want to thank you guys for the topic tonight. Very interesting. I love it. But so the issue of who bears the greatest responsibility, I still hold true that both have shared responsibility. But now, given the government, what we're talking about, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. We hear you loud and clear.
And the government we're talking about. Okay, so given the response with the government and everything we're talking about, then I would say that the greatest responsibility is on the Senate, because everybody said, for the most part, that the government decides to appoint, or the president appoints for his own pleasure. So then comes the Senate to do the due diligence, which is check and make sure everything is in compliance and all of that. So if somebody keeps saying the word confirm, they have to look at it in a greater context. Confirm just doesn't mean confirm. You have to look at everything. Look at that resume, every factor on there, do your background check. And so my brother Leo, he keeps saying that the Senate doesn't have time. If the Senate doesn't have time, it doesn't have the tools, then they need to ask for time and tools. It doesn't take, I'm sure he's in America, it doesn't take 6 months to have him employed. 1 month, 2 weeks is a reasonable time, unless it's a federal job, then it takes a longer time. So there's no excuse to say, I don't have the resources. If he's at his job and he doesn't have the resources to perform his job, he goes to his boss and asks for resources. So there's no excuse to be incompetent or to make wrong decisions and just put the wrong person forth. And so I think the Senate needs to do more. I see they're in that direction now with all the public pressure. They're heading in that direction with the Zoli's case, and I'm glad they're on the right path and will keep following. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Savannah. We appreciate your call. We will take our last caller here, gentlemen. We'll come right back to you. Call us strictly to the issue.
Hello?
Yeah.
Am I the one?
Yeah, you are the one. Your name and where are you calling from?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Mazola Gizi calling from Philadelphia.
Okay. Straight to the issue. Who bears the greatest responsibility? Yeah, straight to the issue. Who bears the greatest responsibility?
Okay. I want to concur with Mr. Steve Bole. He has been very, very articulate during the topic today, and also Mr. Yala and the last caller, Deniere. In my opinion, the Senate takes the major responsibility because you and I know that confirmation is being done by the Senate. What does that mean? It means that when the president makes an appointment, that appointee or that nominee must be evaluated, must be assessed based on every information given. So if the Senate approves someone and that person doesn't perform well, who should we blame? We blame the Senate, the senators. Right now, you can see in Liberia, whatever has transpired of the present since the president we have took over. Many have always really complained the president, but there are many of us who believe that the Senate is supposed to carry the blame. The reason is very simple, because most of the people that the president appointed, they went through confirmation, and most of them were just approved by the Senate. And I want to remind all of us here that this situation is because of the way our country has been run throughout the previous years. I believe all of you are familiar with the proverb or a parable to say, so say one, so say all, during the 2 week party time. What is the indication of that, or what is the meaning of that? When the president says this, everybody agrees. So there has not been counter check. What have you? Everybody just agrees. Say, okay, so the president said, let us agree. This is the reason why, in my opinion, the Senate are not being respected. They are not respected in Liberia because they have refused to perform their duties diligently. And in addition to that, we all know that even the president can be summoned by the legislature. The president can be impeached. But because they have refused to do their job effectively, we are being accustomed to president making an appointment and the legislature approves it or the Senate approves it. Therefore, it has become a policy that whenever they want to do their job effectively, we criticize them. We criticize them because they have not been
All right. Thank you, caller. Thank you for your splendid contribution there. Let's come to you, our panelists. We have been here a little over we have to close. Let's take your closing acumen here. Mr. Conan, you want to sit up a little bit? It seems to be you're ready to go first.
The old age. No, Mr. Seer, I think tonight's discussion was a very beautiful discussion.
That's what we do, Mr. Conan.
Yeah. I think it was a beautiful discussion, and I think I want to thank my fellow panelists for their contribution. I think justice was done to the issue. But in my opinion, we still do feel that under our system of government, the president do bear the greatest responsibility if there is any incompetence, if there are individuals that may not have too good a character that in our government, individuals that fail to perform. At the same time, we recognize that both the president and the legislature has a shared responsibility to ensure that Liberia benefit from its brightest. But we hold the president responsible because beyond the president's responsibility over the officials of government go beyond confirmation. The legislature will only stop at confirmation. So the question is, after confirmation, and we have a situation where somebody who may even be very brilliant at confirmation, that person get confirmed, and the person begin to perform, and the performance is below par. Who do you hold responsible for that, for the continuous presence of that person? And I think that's the point we're making. But we do recognize that both parties do have a role to play. And for me, I'm encouraged by this because that has been one of my push. We are looking for our democracy to function in a way that the branches of government coexist and they perform their constitutional role of check and balance on each other so that for the good of the country. But the role of the Senate in the confirmation process is something that we have to be very careful about. Because all of the variables that are being introduced here, most of them are subjective. These positions we're talking about, there is no layout qualification for them in the Constitution that can serve as a guide for the Senate in determining, qualification, competence, and all of that stuff. So all of these things are leveled the subjective determination of senators. And this is why I think caution needs to be exercised. And with regard to the current issue, we should also be very careful. I like the open nature of the confirmation process. It avoids some level of transparency for us to know what is going on, for us to look at the deliberation, not only the deliberation, but to even look at the discourse and to see, how both the nominee and the Senate, how all of them are conducting themselves, because in a democracy, all of these people should be held accountable. And I agree with Leo. I mean, when you appear before the Senate or when you appear before any lawful authority, you have the obligation to be truthful on things that you do. Any attempt to hide things that you do or to lie to a lawful authority is something that should not be condoned. So we are hoping that the Senate will continue their process. The Senate will continue the confirmation process, the advice and consent process. But again, it is our opinion that the president bears the greatest responsibility in this area. It is the president that has all the executive authority to vet individuals, to investigate individuals, the investigative agency. He has all of that too. And the Senate is only making a snapshot decision. And beyond the Senate decision, the president still has authority to take corrective measures if individuals are performing below expectations. So this is why we attribute that highest responsibility to the president.
Thank you, Mr. Conan. Give me your closing argument. We'll come to Mr. Steve Bole for his closing argument. Steve.
I'd like to say thanks to Focus on Liberia for the opportunity for us to openly discuss this, to have this conversation with our people and to also educate them. And just to create this kind of platform wherein we can disseminate information, check one another, in a very respectful way, in a professional way as well. I want to thank Mr. Cohn and my brother Leo. It's good being in here with him, knowing him from Ivory Coast. I also want to thank you and Mr. Ja for the work you guys do. I'd like to use this opportunity to invite everyone to the upcoming All Liberian Diaspora Conference in Washington, D.C. and Maryland coming up in March. We'll be there by the grace of God. We will be there to support this cause, and we're inviting all of you. If you ever need any kind of special invitation, or you might need some kind of letter, please feel free to reach me via Facebook, and I will definitely make that available to you. But on this note, I'd like to say, I think it is important for us to encourage the president to nominate as he pleases. We also encourage the president to establish a very good vetting process in his candidates, so that when he presents them, he can go and lay down and sleep knowing fully and surely that they meet the criteria set up by the agency or the ministry. Also, we like to encourage the senators and the representatives to get abreast informed and know what they are doing, and maintain integrity for the office which they hold. This is the best thing we can do. We want to encourage all Liberians to hold their leaders accountable. I think this is good. This is good for our democracy. Whether you are CDC or whether you are not a CDC, it doesn't matter. All political parties, we should make sure that we also vote in good representatives and senators that will stand for the people and stand for Liberia, so that we can do the best thing. Let's educate our senators. Let's inform them to educate themselves as well. And let's continue to do the right thing for Liberia. Thank you so much.
Mr. Steve Bullitt there giving a closing argument. He joined us from Phoenix, Arizona. Mr. Leo Johnson, your closing argument.
I'll re-echo the sentiments of the other panelists as well, just thanking Focus on Liberia, but also thanking our other panelists for, their expertise and their knowledge and sharing everything here tonight. We disagree on these things because we hope to expound our views to help educate each other as we go along, but also to raise questions for future inquisition as well as we continue to learn more and more every day. I will touch a few things quickly for my closing points. Few callers ask questions within church. I will answer them quickly. Holds one passport or serving 10 years without changing status. To that caller, I say, I don't know. Zolizo said that, and there is no other information to prove otherwise, so I will take him at his word. Again, we should be careful about peddling these things that we have no evidence for, because Liberians, we are good at it. People create some kind of sentiments, and before you know it, everybody runs with it, and nobody got evidence to prove otherwise. Until somebody can produce something that proves otherwise, that Zolizo holds another passport, I take him at his word that he holds a Liberian passport, and that's the passport he's ever held. Let's come to the other caller who talked about that I said time, the Senate does not have time. People keep reducing resources to time. Time is just one small factor. When I talk about vetting, the executive branch of the government is already taxed with that responsibility in our governance system. You don't want to duplicate that. Unless you're telling me, say, the Senate itself needs to have a separate budget to recreate its own vetting system, so that when the executive finish vetting, then the Senate go ahead also vet before confirming. Number two, let's look at the fact here. There is no obvious safe-proof process for determining if a candidate that is appointed is going to be inept or not. Based on a person's resume and qualification does not necessarily mean there are a lot of people who you appoint in the United States that will do a splendid job with a huge experience and a track record. You take them to Liberia, you appoint them in the same position, they fall flat and fail and prove completely inept simply because the environment is different, the context is different, the resources at their disposal are different. So there is no proof process for the Senate to be able to 100% determine that this candidate will be qualified and will not be inept. The Senate can only make sure that there is no foul play, that there is no red flag, that there is no deception, there is no breaking of the Constitution for someone to be determined. Nobody have a safe proof process. That is the reason why I argue that the president controls 80% of the nomination and appointment process. He can fire, he can hire. The Senate cannot fire and hire. The Senate can only confirm or reject. The president can hire somebody who looks competent on the record, and by what they've done, they go in a position they are completely inept. They can't make it there. Only the president has the power to fire. You use Samuel Twe as an example. If everybody complaining that Samuel Twe is not doing a job, only one man capable. Even the Senate is not capable of moving Samuel Twe. Only one man has that power. It is the president of the Republic of Liberia. The last thing I will also say is, Liberians, we like to think about what we wish should be done and think that because we wish it and hope it, which is a good thing, it means that is a requirement. The Senate is not a unitary body. It's a makeup of people from different political parties. So when we talk about the Senate, let's remember, we're not talking about a body that is uniform in their thought process and 100% agrees on everything. There are senators who will always vote in favor of a nominee for a very particular reason. There are other senators who will vote against. So when we start to assign greater responsibility, let's realize that the Senate does not have a uniform control. Each senator reserves the right to vote whichever way they want to vote, because in their opinion, that's what they think. The president has absolute control of the executive, unlike the president. The president can decide what he wants to do and fully decide, even if some of his ministers disagree, he can say, whether you disagree or not, I'm going ahead with it, and he can do it. The Senate is not the same. You need majority of the senators from multiple parties to concur on something which, besides appointments on any legislature or any legislation, is a challenge. So when we speak of the Senate, let's talk about the political realities to say the Senate cannot bear a greater responsibility when they control a very tiny, minute portion of the actual process, where the president controls 80%. He can hire somebody who looks competent and pass all the marks that the president getting a job and become inept, and then he has to fire them. He has the right to fire them and hire another person. So I will argue again that the president bears the greater responsibility because he can correct the flaws or not correct the flaws. And I want to thank all of my panelists as well who made some very valuable points. Thank you.
All right, folks.
And Leo, before we close, I'm going to call you, Leo.
Okay. All right, Eminent. I'll be waiting for your call.
All right. That was a violation there by Mr. Kone. He's going to pay a fine, and that fine will be heavy. He has committed an intellectual offense.
I apologize.
An intellectual offense, and you will be fined. Folks, in cyberspace, this is focused on Liberia, and as you have been watching, we've been discussing who bears the greater responsibility for any inept, unqualified, incompetent, and a shady character in a government. The president who appoints or the Senate that confirms. That is what we have been discussing. We hope that we were able to bring you the panelists that gave you all of the oranges and apples that you were looking for to have a fulfilling debate. I'm sure we did. Mr. Jai.
And I want to thank our panelists as well as our viewers, those who asked questions, who wrote comments. We may not be able to read all your comments, but we surely appreciate them. From the look of things, I think this was a very spirited and informative debate. You see that most of our callers sided with Mr. Steve Bullitt. I don't know whether because of his argument or because of his praise for Liberian women. I don't know which one. but in any case, most of our callers sided with him. But all parties presented very strong arguments, and we want to say thank you so much. We will continue on this. Every Friday is our debate Friday. And if you have any ideas, things to debate about, we don't have all the ideas, please drop us a line. You can call me, Mr. C, or any of our Focus on Liberia partners, and we'll be glad to accept and make a show out of what you tell us. So please keep your comments coming. And we want you to also support us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tomorrow at the same time, no, not the same time, but tomorrow at 3 o'clock, we have a show, and also at 7. You don't want to miss it. So keep your dial set here. Back to you, Mr. Asoni, for closing.
So, folks, this is how we will conclude our broadcast, and we can leave again by saying thanks to our many viewers and followers on Facebook and also on YouTube. We appreciate you supporting what we do here at Focus on Liberia. Here at Focus on Liberia, our goals are to educate, to elevate, and promote all things Liberia, and this is how we think we can do it best. Again, thank you for watching, and bye-bye with our closing song.
We are